guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Taylor and I make scrunchies and bows and now makeup bags. I've been doing so for 11.5 years. In today's video, I'm going to be doing one of the most requested videos of the last probably 12 months. Is the makeup bag tutorial or the carry all bag tutorial or whatever you like to call it. Just like a toiletry bag. I don't have any in here. Why don't I have any in here? I'll grab one. So these are the toiletry bags that I'm talking about. So I have 3 different sizes and I've been selling them for about 12 months, almost 12 months I think. Yeah, it'll be very close to 12 months by the time this video is posted. So yeah, 12 months. I designed the pattern myself. I think I did like 10 different patterns and then ended up choosing this one, which was my favorite. And I also tried a bunch of different tutorials that I found online. So I will be showing you an updated version of that tutorial because the one I found was in a different language. It wasn't in English. So I'll be going into depth in that tutorial. So yeah, I haven't made that tutorial. That's not like my tutorial. There are certain elements of this tutorial that I have changed. So I guess I've made it my own. And the one thing I have actually done is I've made a pattern for you guys to purchase. You can make your own pattern. As I said, I made this one. So like it's not too hard to make your own. But yeah, it'll be looking something like this. I've like just printed this one out very like sketchily because I'm still like drafting it. So it's like my little pattern thing. I'll have them available in the 3 different sizes. So that will be available when this video is released. So you can go purchase a PDF pattern so you can print it at home. Or I will also have ones that are made ready to go to be shipped out, although that might be expensive if you live overseas, so probably better off with the PDF pattern. Also, I will be selling these as packs, so you can purchase the pack with fabric and all the interfacing and everything you need, and then just make it yourself when you receive it. So that will also be available on my website. So you can follow along if you purchase one of those packs, purchase the PDF, or if you just want to see how to make it yourself and figure it out for yourself and make your own pattern, you can follow along too. So let's get started. So that's like, as an intro, I guess. I'll only be making one of the sizes in this tutorial, probably just the medium. Yeah, the tutorial and the pattern will be available to purchase in like a booklet as well. So this is just like an added bonus for anyone that purchases that. But I've also put it on here for free as well for anyone that's interested. But if you do want to support me, you can go purchase that on my links below. I have put a lot of effort into it, trying to design like something online. It was really hard. I had no idea what I was doing. I will have tabs down below so you can like scroll to wherever you want to choose in the video as well, because I will try and like do some tips and stuff. I'll also be publishing one where I don't speak, because I know that I speak a lot and I know it really annoys some people. Like I know it doesn't annoy a lot of yous, but some of yous it annoys. So I will be publishing one that I'm not speaking at all and you guys can like just see what I'm doing just to make more people happy. Let's start off with what fabrics I do recommend and what materials I do recommend to be using for the bags. The outer side, so there's 2 main types of the fabric that I use. So there's the outer side and then there's the inner side. So for both inner and outer, I would recommend a cotton. Rayon's okay for the inside. I probably wouldn't recommend it for the outside. Muslin, like cheeseclothy sort of material, probably wouldn't go on the inside. Is okay on the outside, but it also just depends as well. And then there's like a bunch of other materials like canvas, that sort of stuff. Something that's a bit more durable. Like I wouldn't recommend anything that's like satin or anything. I just won't work. You can obviously do your own tests and trials and see what works best. You also need a zip. So for my zip, I just use the exact same zipper on all of my bags because I just think it makes it easy and they're more uniform. You can use whatever zip you like. I use one that's on a continuous length rather than purchasing ones that are like the same sort of, yeah. I don't bother with that. I just use a continuous length and then cut to size. And then I also put my own zippers on there. So that is that one. This is like a number 5. I guess you could use a number 3 if you wanted, but I just like the chunkier zip on here. And then let's talk about the inside. So the stuff that you can't see, I use a few different types and you do not have to use as many as me. I just like them because they make the bag a bit more sturdy. And I'll also talk about one other type as well, but that type is very expensive. So, I mean, if you are choosing that one, fair enough. But yeah, they are just really expensive. What I use in my bags, I have a wadding that's like this. It's quite thick. I'll put a photo here of what it exactly is called. It comes in a massive roll. You probably will be able to buy it in like a smaller roll or something because it is a massive roll. It will make quite a few bags. I don't just like using this though. I know that there's like definitely like something out there that would have both of these combined, but but I like to use this with a layer of just a normal wadding. So this one's just a birch wadding, just softer, because I feel like this one's thick, it adds the thickness, but it's also not as dense, whereas this one's quite dense. When you put them together, it just, I don't know, I just feel like it adds like a nice, I don't know, it just makes it a lot nicer. Finding when I was using like the thinner cotton materials, you could like feel the graininess of this underneath. So just by putting those two layers together, I feel like it adds a bit more like makes it a bit more dense and a bit more like, yeah, if that makes sense. Okay, these are the two that I use in my bag. And then for the interfacing slash stabilizer, I can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's interfacing. I have been using that on the insides with the lining to help with the pockets, so then like the pockets don't rip or anything. Also just to like make it a bit more, yeah, stable, not as like floppy and stuff. So I have been using two different types depending on what material I've been using. So this one is just like your regular lightweight interfacing. That one's also from Birch. Has a side that's a little bit more glossy and a side that's a bit more plain. So there's that one, and then there's this one which is also from Birch, but this one's for stretch materials. So as you can see, it has a bit of stretch in there. I've been using this for rayons and I much prefer it for rayons. Like at first I was like, I don't know, but no, it does work really well with rayons. Like it doesn't make it feel heaps more like dense, but it just makes it a little bit nicer. I don't know, I just prefer it. These two types as well that I use depending on what material I'm using for the insides. This foam is actually what a lot of other bag makers use to give it a lot of stability. But this foam is very expensive, so I don't particularly use it, but I mean, not to say that you can't. So that's what this one is. It has like sticky on both sides, like a foam roll, and it like sticks. So I was using this with my laptop sleeves, but I really don't like making the laptop sleeves, so I'm not making those anymore. I do have two different types of electric scissors. I've got these two different ones. This one's from Vevor. I'll link them down below. This one cuts a lot of material all at once. It's also really good to cut the big wadding with. If you're only making one, I'd probably go with this one. It is a smaller scissor. It's just easier to cut, especially those little divots. I know I might get asked this question, why did I choose this one over all the other methods? I just preferred this method. Once everything's up to like my final stage where I'm ready to assemble, they only take 6 to 12 minutes depending on the size. So they're actually quite quick to assemble, but it's just getting to that stage that takes a while. I know a lot of people like to do like the rectangle ones and then cut it out after. I did try that and I tried a few other different ways. They just weren't for me. So, you know, some people might like this pattern, some people might not like it, but yeah, it's just what works for me, and I like doing it this way. I'm going to use my template that looks like this. Obviously you'll have a template that's paper. First step is printing off your PDF file. So if you have the PDF version, this part is for you. To print the PDF file, you need to figure out which sort of printer you have. So you would either have like the US letter printer or the A4. Because I'm in Australia, I will go the A4 printer. Then you'll need to choose what size bag you'd like to do. I'm doing the medium today, so I'll click that one. So it opens up the PDF file and has all the different pages. So it's split up onto different pages, so you'll have to tape them together. They are overlapped as well. So when I've done, like created these patterns, I figured out with my printer, it doesn't print all the way to the sides and kept cutting off crucial parts. So I have overlapped them just so it will fit and work on every single printer. Are overlapped by about 1 centimeter on the sides that need to be taped together. So you'll see what I mean in a moment, but you'll just need to go into print, select the printer that you'd like, make sure all pages are selected. You can print in color or print without color. Make sure you turn off double-sided print and then select the paper size. So I am printing an A4, so I've selected the A4. Now this is the most important part, so you can get the scaling correctly. Always have it to 100% scale. That way it will print correctly. There is a print test on here so you can double check, and then print as normal. Okay, this next step is mostly just for people with the paper pattern that are printing at home, so feel free to skip this step because it's just really about assembling it. So let's have a look. So as I said, this one is the medium size. I've printed and I've double checked that this is correct. As long as you have it at 100% scale, it should be correct though, unless your printer's like being funny. And if it is being funny, it's fine because like it's just a bag. If it's like a millimeter out, it's not going to make that big of a difference. If it was closed, like that would be a different story. But it is just a bag. Doesn't have to be exact. I've got it numbered up the top. So it is numbered up the top. Page A1. So A goes at the top, B goes down the bottom, and then obviously 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that is how I've got it to be put together. It did actually print pretty good this time, because the other times I printed it, leaves a massive gap on the side, which is why I have so many of these little corner things. But this one looks like it's actually printed pretty good. I'm just going to line everything up to the best that I can. And I'm also going to use a little bit of washi tape and then go over it with some sticky tape, just so if I mess up, I can rearrange. So I'm not going to worry about A3 because like it doesn't need to be stuck together. So as you can see, my printer has printed off a little bit because this matches up and this matches up, but this side is actually like a little bit further out. So normal home printers tend to do that. They won't print exact. Yeah, I've just tried to make heaps of diamonds just so you can line it up perfectly. So then, yeah, you won't have any issues. All right, see, there we go. Everything else matches up. You've got all that situated. Obviously there might be less or more depending on what size you're doing. Just make sure all the lines kind of match up best of their ability. I'm going to use my actual sticky tape to sticky tape all this down so it doesn't fall apart. Okay, that one wasn't the best. You may also notice that I've numbered all the pieces. So all the pieces are numbered, so when you get the booklet, if you want to read the booklet or if you want to watch the YouTube video, they are numbered on what they are. Color coded, so if you don't print it out in the color, you can just color it in lightly in a different color, like a highlighter or a text or a pencil. That way you'll know for like the pockets and everything what size is for what. That's sort of like what I was thinking with that. So for the medium size, color it in like blue or something, so then all of the blue pieces are for the medium bag, if that makes sense. This is my old rotary cutter, so before anyone screams at me, it is for paper. So after you've got that all done, I do have an extra bonus thing that you can print out to get the label centered. But not everyone will have a label, so I've kept that separately. Yeah, so you can print that out if you want. That's an optional thing. Let's get back to the next step. So this next step will be, yeah, assembling everything that you need. So your pattern, label optional. You need a lining piece of fabric and an outer piece of fabric. I will add the sizes that I use here to cut. Again, if you don't have the template though, like you can maybe figure it out if you want to do like something similar. But yeah, these are the sizes that I do recommend cutting for my specific patterns. And then I've also got the pockets and everything. Again, they come with what sizes to cut those out. Play around with the sizings and figure out what works best for you. We have the pocket, which has the lining and the outer piece. We have a tab and we have a handle. My biggest tip here is don't cut out this until you've quilted the actual pieces, and same with the stapler, like the interfacing. You want to put the interfacing on before you cut this pattern out. I have wrote that on here because if you're like me and maybe just like skip some instructions and just like quickly do it, you might end up with like, oh no, I've really messed up here. The pockets and stuff though, as you can see, don't contain that information. You can go ahead and cut those. And then of course you need to figure out your wadding and interfacing. For my bags, I'm using the Birch interfacing lightweight for the lining, and then 2 pieces of wadding, but you can use whatever you like, whatever you prefer, or whatever you have laying around. And last but not least, you need the zip as well. I use a continuous length, and I also put my own zips on as well. Now once you got all your supplies, let's get started on actually putting it together. So there is a lot of ironing involved, so you will need an iron and you will need a sewing machine. Some other optional items that could be helpful are definitely little clips or pins. I like to use clips because I don't like pins. I feel like I would accidentally leave them around and accidentally stab myself with them. So I use like the Wonder clips, so they can be helpful. A pen that you can use that's heat erasable pen. Heat erasable pen's also a good little option. Also a different foot for your machine, but this one would probably only be beneficial if you're doing quite a few of these sort of bags. And that's even if you want to do the quilted bag, because some people, you might want to skip that step, which is okay too, but I'll show you what it is. So this is what I have on my machine. This is an industrial machine, so it will look a bit different to just your normal domestics, but you can get domestic foots for this. I got mine off AliExpress. I think I wrote quilted foot or something, industrial foot, but you'd write domestic. You just have to check if it will fit your machine. Okay, this stage is ironing. Ironing is not fun for me. I don't like ironing, but some other people might. Let's iron some things. And for the handle, that's probably the only thing that will change like the most if you're not using my specific pattern. Just the easiest way to describe it is from here to here. So that's what I'm keeping it as. So from here to here is how big the handle is, and then it's by 4 inches. So for example, 5 inches, 4 inches. Hope that makes sense. So now I'll get heaps of comments about it, be like, why don't you share everything? And I'm just like, well, the pattern's there. And you can work it out yourself if you want. Next step is ironing. So you will definitely need an iron for this tutorial, and use like a smaller heat press thing. I have been using my Cricut Mini. That does work too. I also do like to use my actual big heat press to do these in bulk, because we're only doing one today and most people won't have a heat press. We will use a little iron. So it is best to see what your interfacing recommends. I am going to quickly press some of these materials though, just to get some creases out. With the tab, I just fold both sides in and then fold the whole thing over. And I fold it like the long ways, so like in and over. So I don't fold it the short way, if that makes sense. Same with the handle. I fold it across the 4-inch side, not the longer side. So just fold it into the middle and then fold it all the way over. Like that. For the lining, I am using interfacing. I'm just going to give it a quick iron because there are a bit of crinkles in there. So it is good to spray with interfacing when putting interfacing on. I don't have a spray bottle in here with me, but my iron does have a bit of water in there, so that's a good start. And it's just good to look at the instructions. Like some of them say low heat and some of them say a lot of steam, some of them say no steam. So just make sure you follow your instructions that it says on the interfacing. For my interfacing, that will be included in the like DIY packs. I use, I think, like the wool settings, like not too hot and a lot of steam. I feel like steam works like really well for this. And I try and do, it does take a while. Like if you have a heat press, I'll definitely recommend doing that instead. But it's like 30 seconds or something that you'd want to be on each section. And if you're doing it like this, like there's so many. So I do one side, then I flip it, and then I do the other side. I'm definitely no expert at putting this interfacing on though, so take what I say with a grain of salt. And I find like with the, like I sometimes get bubbles, and I don't get bubbles when I use the heat press. So I have been, yeah, trying to use the heat press a lot more. And I think that's because of, yeah, just like the way I'm applying it maybe. So I like to just give the outer piece just a quick iron because it can get crinkled. Then the next step is putting both your waddings on top of each other. I like to have the fluffy one on the bottom and then the nice one on the top. And then I put that on top of that. Also with the waddings and the stabilizer, I tend to try and cut a little bit extra. And same with even the outer and the linings. Notice that the sizes are a lot bigger than just this. And that is because of the next step I'm going to do, which is quilting it. The lining you could probably cut a lot smaller and like cut it exact to size, but I just do it because it's just easier to think of one like the same size for both. But yeah, you can definitely cut more, yeah, more conservatively and cut it correctly. Alright, the next step you're going to do is quilt it. Now when I first did the quilting, or I got that little foot, you can mark it out using a heat erasable pen or like chalk or something that can be easily removed from the outer fabric, because it is a little bit harder, like you can't really do it on here, if that makes sense. Another way around it, if you're not using that really thick one, you could do it on the back side of a piece of wadding like this with a normal pen, or if whatever you have at home. Now mine is about, I think, an inch. Yeah, I'm gonna say like an inch I usually use. This can change however you want to do it, but you just go along and mark out an inch, and then mark out inch on this side, and then you would connect them, like you'd draw lines. Or if you're feeling really lucky, you could try and like sew from here to here in a straight line and just sew all the way down without drawing anything on here. So it really just depends on how you want to try it out. The other option is you don't even have to quilt at all. You could just leave it like this. If that's what you want to do, you can leave it like this, skip to the next step. But I like it quilted. So this is what I mean by like quilted. It has like the little lines in there. So that's what I mean. Obviously you can also do it like crisscross as well. That just would take a little bit more time and effort. So I don't do that. I usually just do straight across. This is an industrial machine, so it will look a bit different. A domestic is going to take a little bit more effort because domestic usually doesn't have your thread cutter. This one cuts thread automatically. Yeah, it's just a lot quicker. So yeah, do what you can. Turn it on. For the stitch length, I tend to use anything above 3 to do this part. A little bit more big of a gap. For the thread color, I usually just use white unless it's like a super vibrant print, then I'll try and match it as best as I can. I mean, 9 out of 10 of my bags have just the white thread. So you can use the clips to clip up the top. I find that's like the only place that slips. Everywhere else is kind of pretty good, but I do like to clip up the top, especially on the large pieces, so it doesn't slip as much. So you can clip up the top like that, yeah, or clip all around, whatever you want to do. Another point is the needle. So I use a stretch needle in my machine, which a lot of people disagree with, mostly because I just do scrunchies, but there are other needle types that you can use if you're making bags which are a bit more heavy duty. With the industrial, I don't really have any issues. I did have issues at the start, but that's because I was using like a different wadding. Since I changed the wadding to like this like fluffy one, I haven't really had any broken needles, like maybe like 3 in a year since I changed, so not many. But I do sometimes still use the thicker ones if I'm doing like my velvet bags because they're a bit thicker. Yeah, in general, you probably should use a universal needle or something a bit more heavy duty, especially in a domestic machine, because you might struggle with doing like running over actual zips and stuff. But with the industrial, I find it's kind of fine. But anyway, that's like my other point that I wanted to make. I usually start over in the corner and I just do 1 line down. Also good to mention that I usually do from top to bottom, not sideways. Okay, so you're gonna end up like this. As you can see, it is a bit like bumpy. I like to just iron it out once it is like this stage. So with the iron, you can already see the difference. Now we're going to cut out the templates. So following the main panel, cut 1 times main fabric, quilt first. We've quilted that, so that's ready to go. If you don't want to quilt it, that's okay too. You've probably skipped this step, which is good. Just make sure like you pin it or something so then it doesn't move too much. Because I've quilted it all, it's much easier to cut everything out because yeah, everything's together. Cutting it without quilting, just make sure everything's kind of like pinned down or something. And then cut 1 times lining after applying the interfacing, which that's also done. So we'll cut out the interfacing first. So you can cut the interfacing out using yours. I'll probably just use mine though because it's mine and it's here. So with the gingham ones, I also try and like line it up as best as I can. If you are using the paper pattern, I would also recommend putting something on top of the paper, like something to keep it weighted. The good thing about this is it's already kind of like quite heavy, so I don't really need anything weighted down, which is good. And to get like these little corners out, I usually use either the rotary cutter to an extent, or I try and use the little blue scissors, the electric ones that I showed earlier on in the video. So then you end up with something like this. So the lining's done. And now we're going to do the outer piece. With the outer piece, again, I try and line up as best as I can with the 3 corners with one of the lines. Sometimes my lines are pretty off though, so I just try and like make it as straight as possible. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to start cutting out that. Again, I usually put like stuff like this on the paper one so it doesn't move around. You can actually get proper paperweights though. So So now we're pretty much up to the assembling stage, which is great. So for the assembling stage, you should have your outer piece, your lining piece, pocket, which we will work on right now, your tab, your handle, a label is optional, and also a zipper. So I'm going to work on these ones now. So we're just going to sew down both of these sides. Okay, now you want to do the pocket. You want to make sure nice sides are facing the middle, which I did just mess that up and did it the wrong way around for the first time ever, so thought I would also mention that. And you need to like leave like maybe a 2-inch gap on one of the edges. I like to leave it at the top edge. So I've just left a gap here so then I can pull it back out the other way. And I also have like this little knitting needle that I use to kind of poke out the corners. Makes it a bit easier. You can cut off the excess if you'd like to make the corners more sharp. And then I sew that, so I sew straight across there. So I sew that closed and I just go iron those quickly. Alright, now once we're up to this part, this is the assembly part. This part usually takes me 6 to 12 minutes depending on the bag size. This one should take me about 8 minutes, maybe a little bit longer now that I'm trying to teach it though. We will start off with the label. As I mentioned earlier in the video, you may not have a label to put on there. I will be including labels in the DIY packs that you purchase from my store. Not my label, but like a nice pretty one. So what you need is the outer side. And if you are using the label, this is how you do it. I like to put mine directly in the middle of this section here. So in the middle here and in the middle of like just pretend that's like a section. Hang on, if we bend it, you can kind of tell. Right there in the middle. So this is the piece that I use. It has a little cutout in the middle. So I just kind of loosely line up the corners and then I put the label in the middle of that and kind of make sure it's, yeah, straight. I try and line up with the actual lines as well, and then I just sew down the sides. Depending on what sort of label you have, you might have to sew the whole, like all sides, but mine you don't have to. Oh, I've also been doing backstitch. So this machine does automatic backstitch, which is great. So I would recommend it doing backstitch for a lot of this process as well. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but I mean, it shouldn't matter too much because we haven't really done anything too important yet. But yeah, going forward, definitely try and do backstitch for a lot of the things we're doing. So I've got one side on, now I'm just going to sew the other side. For this, I kind of pull it a little bit tight. Not too tight, but it just means that the middle part, because it is like kind of like bumpy, it will sit nicer. So like it's like this, because sometimes if it's too loose, by the time we like put the bag together, it kind of like it's floppy like this. And you don't want that. Okay, once you got your label on, we're going to move on to the pocket. So for the pocket, again, we're going to try and put it in between this section here. I like to try and line up the bottom part with this. So just pretend there's like an imaginary line there. I like to try and like line it up, not perfectly, but like just maybe 5 millimeters upwards. It's kind of like that. And then we sew here, here, and here. Obviously just don't sew over the top. I usually just eyeball it. You can be more pedantic with it if you like and make sure it's exactly in the middle. Again, you'd want to do a couple of back stitches. I think this is a double back stitch on mine at the moment. So yeah, do a few back stitches, especially for the pocket. But then you'll end up with that, and that's like the little pocket there. Okay, the next step, you want to put both your lining and your outer piece together facing each other. So the pretty side on the inside. I like to also have the pocket and the label upwards, if that makes sense. So this step you can pin if you like, pin it all together. So like maybe pin the middle parts, so then it doesn't move too much. And this step we're going to put the zipper in. Now again, I have a very small foot on my sewing machine, so you may have to change your foot to a zipper foot. This one isn't a specific zipper foot, so I am very lucky that this one just works out that it's, yeah, small enough for a zipper. With the zipper, you want to have it facing down. So this is the teeth facing up. You want to have it facing down and also have it line up with that outer corner. And then we're going to kind of sandwich it in. Now, you can also pin all this down. I am fast and loose though, and I don't do that. But you can definitely pin all the way down to the opposite end. I'm sort of sewing as much as I can against the, I don't know if you can see it there, but the other side of the zip. So I'm just going to sew all the way down until I get to this. I'm just going to put my needle down so I can move this up so I don't sew over it and break a needle. Now I'm just going to continue on. So now it should look like this. We've got one side sewn all the way up the top. When you open it up, it should look like this. Have a look now and make sure that the inside of the zip is facing the lining and the outside of the zip is facing the outer fabric. So have a look now, make sure that is, yeah, correct. Now we're going to sandwich this like this. So we're folding it over, pretty sides together again. So that's on the inside. And we're going to line up this corner with this piece of material as well. So we're going to line all this up. And again, you can use your like little wonder clips. And you want to make sure that the zip is on the edge and that this matches. Like you don't want to have it like too far down like that. You want to make sure that it is horizontal. So I'm going to just clip that there. And again, you can use like your clips to clip it all the way down. And notice how we're not using the lining at this point just right now either. So we're just doing the outer fabric. We're just working on that. So then you can go all the way down and then do the same with the opposite end. Just make sure that the zipper is sort of flush with that corner. And as you can see, that does come out a bit, and that's because of the zipper. So we're just going to make sure that that's horizontal and not too, like, you don't want to have it like that on each end. So that's what that looks like from both sides. Now we're going to sew down here. Once you get to where your zip is, again, put the needle down, lift your foot and move it out of the way so you don't accidentally break a needle, because that will break a needle and mess up your zipper. This part is also now the outer fabric. So you got both sides. But now we need to sew this loose piece of lining. So we're going to put this back on like this. Try and line it up to the corners. So I'm just going to line that up as best as I can. So now it should look like this. So you've got like that. When sewing the lining piece, don't sew all the way down. So don't do that. Sew a little bit, probably up until maybe like, see how that's like a corner. Sew until that. And then skip a massive chunk and then sew the rest. So I'll show you what I mean. So I usually sew until about there. Then I'm going to skip this massive chunk and keep sewing when I'm down here. So now you have a little gap. So that's how we're going to turn the bag inside out later on in the video. So I feel like this is like the more complicated version, but I mean, I think the bag looks nicer this way. So once we've got the lining now sewn and the outer fabric, we're going to sort of start assembling it. So we're going to open up the outer fabric and place it down like this. And we're going to do that to the lining as well. So it's going to start assembling an actual bag. So we're going to do that. So now we've got all these different layers as well that we have to sew up. The reason I'm talking about the direction of the zip, this part is the most important part, and I'm going to tell you why so you can understand why it is important. If you don't find that it's important, that's okay. I just like to do it this way. You want to make sure that the zip, when you open it up, is facing the tab, and then when you close it, it's facing the handle. And the reason for that is when you hold the handle, if the zip is on the opposite side, things could fall out of it. So if that makes sense to you. So that's the reason I've done it that way, and that is what I would recommend you doing, because if you had it the opposite way and the handle was on this side, and if you've left it open slightly, something could fall out, like a makeup brush or a pencil or something. So you don't want to do it that way. In saying that, let's work out which way this is. So you can kind of see where the zipper is. Usually the direction that it's going away from is where the tab goes, and then the way that it's coming to, so this it's zipping towards me, that's where the handle will go. Because yeah, once it's all closed up, the handle will be on that side. So yeah, just keep an eye on that, make sure you're doing it the right way. Alright, we're going to flip it and we're going to put the tab in. Just want to make sure that everything's sort of looking as neat as possible. It is a little bit fiddly, this part, but you want to try and have, you know, the linings all matching up to as best as your ability, and the outer piece here matching up to the best of your ability. So you can use like your little clips again to just line everything up. If you want, you can clip this part out of the way if that makes it easier for you to kind of visualize what we're doing here, but we're only focusing on this part at the moment. So the lining piece and the outer piece, but on the, I guess the bottom, but this is technically the top half. Because you guys are learning, I'm just going to sew straight across, but usually I sew with the tab in. So again, just making sure everything's lined up. This pattern does have a seam allowance, probably should have mentioned that earlier. So I leave like a little bit of a seam allowance on the sides. Now with going over zippers, nylon zippers are fine usually, but I usually just go a bit slower anyway. So then it's like that. So the lining is now attached to this side of the outer fabric. Alright, so we're going to put the little tab in. I usually just try and have it centered across the zipper. Just sit it there. So like that. So it's like the little tab. And now that we've got the tab in, now we can sew the whole, this side together. So I'm going to put that back down. So then now all four, so like the two pieces of lining and the two pieces of the outer will be together. I like to flip this over because it's just easier to see that I'm like getting everything. Again, you can put your little wonder clips on if you like, just to make sure it's all even and going in the correct spot. Now we're going to go over to the other side. This part's pretty important too, because if you miss this part, it's really hard to get it back in. So we're going to open it up a little bit differently. We're going to kind of like put it on its side and kind of open it up like this. Now I am going to put some measurements here. For the medium, I usually do it about 1 inch inwards. So we're putting the handle in. This is so hard to like show you what I'm doing. Sorry, I know it's like kind of not the most ideal lighting at the moment, but we're wanting to put the handle in from here to here. So it's going to go across here. But I usually do about 1 inch. It's down to personal preference as well. Yeah, so whatever I do on this side, I'll try and replicate on the other side. So see how we got like this little flap here? We're sewing right next to this little flap on each side. So yeah, furthest away from the zipper, if that makes sense. So we're sewing on this side. I'm going to put like some little clips here. So like here and here. Hopefully that is like visual enough for you guys to see where we're sewing to put that in. Okay, we're going to sew with the handle facing inwards, not outwards. So we don't want to do this. We want to have it inside the bag. And again, I usually, yeah, do about 2 centimeters in, but it really depends on what you want to do. So I'm going to sew across here. I'm going to sew quite close to the side, and I'm going to go back and forth. So I've sewn that twice up and back. So now it should look like this. So it's still facing inwards. So we're going to do that to the other side now. Okay, so it's like that. Now, have a look. See if this is what yours looks like. If it's not, you'll have to probably do it again. But see how there's like a tiny bit of a gap there between the Like you can see that little gap. That's what you really want. You don't want the handle too high because then it will cover the zip and it makes it a little bit more awkward to open it. Next step is we're going to kind of do what we did before. We're going to put the outer layers together with the corners together, and then we're going to put the corners of the lining together. I'm going to sew this across. Usually I do the whole lot in one go, but yeah, for tutorial purposes, we'll just sew this. You can use your clips again. I do like to also go over the zip more than once, but because we're doing multiple layers of sewing, I'm not doing it, but usually I do go over the zipper a few times. So now that we've got this all together, we're going to put this together, again, corner to corner, and we're going to go sew over the whole thing, like that. Now, because I've got this, but if you have excess, cut that off. We're going to do this part, which this part is very complicated, so apologies in advance. We're going to try and put our hand inside this and open up the zip as far as it can go. So at the moment, the zipper in here, it's completely open, like the zip's on the other side. So that's the first step because it will make it a little bit easier. Next step, we're going to do the handle side first. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the lining and move it to the side. So it's like this. And then move this to the side. So we're sort of making it so the corners are like creased. Like this. This will be really hard, so I'm just going to like show you as best as possible. So like that's where we've just sewn and we're making it wider. And we're having the corners creased on each side. Now you can see that's where the handle is. Okay? I don't know how to explain this in words, but if I can just try and show you, hopefully you'll understand. Pretty much what you do is you just line up your lining and your outer and sew straight across down the side. Because this has a handle, you want to make sure the handle is also in a nice position. So I like to line up the handle with this little seam here, so right here. I like to line this corner of the handle to like here or like a couple millimeters towards the handle. So that's where the handle is and that's where the seam is. If you go further this way, past where this seam is and past where the handle is, it will cover the zip. So you don't want to do that. You do not want to go over here. You want to try and stay closer to where the handle is already. So like that's the other side of the handle. So here to here. You want to try and either match up with this or try and stay this side of that seam. Again, I like to use maybe 3 millimeters, like very close to it, but I don't like to be directly on it, but I like to be close enough to it. So when we usually like pull it all together, it does usually line up pretty well. So like we're practically on it. And like that's okay, like that's probably where you want to aim for, that or like a little bit further down. So we're going to sew this. I like to leave like a few millimeters for seam allowance, so then it actually gets it all. So then we should have lining, the second lining, and then the outer, and then the other outer. So I'm trying to like pull that apart. So you should be able to see that all of them are sewn into that one line. So we're going to do another corner. Again, trying to like flip it out. Again, we're trying to like crease those corners in and like have them pulled apart. Because this one is the opposite side of the handle, wherever you had that handle on the other side, you want to make sure it's exactly the same on this side. So if we're following where that seam is, that's where we want that handle to sit. So we want to try and like manipulate the fabric so it's all sitting nicely there. Again, clips would come in handy here. And then we're going to sew exactly all the way down again. Now, when I open this up, you should be able to see that the handle is practically on that seam. If you notice that the handle is like quite far away, that's probably the time where you need to unpick it and then redo it. Otherwise the handle will look a bit odd. Also, I have noticed that on this side I've kind of missed it a little bit, so I'm going to go back over it just slightly so then I'll have it all stitched up correctly. So you can go through each corner you do, just make sure all layers are in it. These two are the most easy ones, easy corners, because we're not really worrying about the handle or anything. Just need to make sure that the corners are creased. So once you're happy with how that layout is sitting, you sew that. Again, you can check if you've missed any. So doing it this way also means you don't have to do any like bias tape, or you won't have any seams on the inside like that, like unfinished seams or anything. So again, you can just double check that you got the lining and the two outers. Alright, next step. We're going to find and locate the lining hole, and we're just going to push all the way out. If you've left yourself a big enough gap, it should be quite easy, but if you've left yourself a small gap, this might take a while. Okay, once we've pushed it out, I like to just push out all the corners of the lining just to make sure that there's nothing that's missed, like that I haven't accidentally sewn it wrong. That's just like a little quality check that I like to do. And then once I've done that and I'm happy with how that looks, I flip it all the way out. And again, I push out all the corners for the outside. Just push all of those out. You can steam this as well to make them like sit better, but I don't mind how they sit the way it is. And then you can check the handle. So the handle, it's like 1 millimeter out, but I mean, that's fine. If it was like really far out by like a centimeter or something, I would kind of flip it back open, tear it apart, and redo the handle to make sure it's sitting flush. Now, next step is sewing this down. So we need to sew along the zipper line, but we need to make sure we're getting the outer and the lining. And then we also need to sew up this as well. So I'm going to start with the side that doesn't have the hole. I like to just get it really far under and really close to where the zip starts. I don't know if you guys can even see this, it's so bright. But then I just follow the line. I like to use like the zipper foot for this. Again, sorry, it's probably really bright. I don't know how to fix that. But I'm just going to sew all the way. And notice how I'm also manipulating the fabric just slightly, because if I don't want it to like bunch up heaps, I'm just kind of like making sure those pleats stay that way. And I'm also making sure that the lining doesn't come up and get in the way either. So I'm just kind of like pulling both sides back. And like taking my time, because like, yeah, you don't want to like mess this part up. And also hold the zip out of the way, because you don't want to run over the zip by accident. So that's what I mean. So we're just doing a nice little line along here. So this side is a little bit more tricky. I like to get started first and then worry about the pocket, about where my finger is. So I'll just start to there. And then I like to pull tight and fold it under. And you want to make sure it's folded under quite a fair bit, because if it's not, you could possibly run into issues where the actual fabric isn't sewn enough. So this part, you also want to make sure you're just going slow and just make sure you're getting both sides. Just like checking constantly. Sewing both of those up. Because this part is probably like the part that I mess up the most, because I'm trying to rush it. But you really can't rush this part. You need to make sure that you're actually getting both sides of the lining and the outer. Okay, so there we go. So we've got this all sewn along, and if I push this down, this is all sewn up. Sometimes if I push this down, there's like a bigger gap and like the fabric's not sewn properly and I have to like unstitch it. So you want to just make sure that's looking all neat. Okay, then you can like puff it back out. As I said, you can steam these corners if you like, or you can just, yeah, make sure it's all puffed out again. So that is what the bag looks like. So as I was saying, you want to make sure that the zip is facing this when it's open and the handle when it is closed. Because if the handle's too high, like say the handle's sitting there, it would be really awkward to like open it up, and you still want to be able to use the handle quite easily. So that's what that looks like. This is the medium bag. Side looks like that. Has a little pocket, and as you can see, there's no unsightly seams. It's all like together, so you don't need to do any bias tape or anything like that. That's also why this tutorial was my favorite, because of the flipping situation. I didn't have to do anything with that. All I have to do now is just cut all the threads off. So there's like a few threads that need to be cut off. But that is the tutorial for the medium boxy quilted makeup bag. Let me know what you guys think. The tutorial obviously is free. You can make your own pattern, or you can purchase my pattern online. I'll link it down below. I also have the DIY kits available too, so you don't have to worry about getting all like those extra pieces like the zip and the zipper and like the wadding and everything. It all comes all together, so you can give it a go yourself. That's all done. That is my tutorial for the makeup bag. Hopefully I've explained it enough. I'm hoping everyone understands what I'm saying and like hopefully be able to see what I mean. I'm also going to have one where I'm not talking at all. That one probably would be more for people that obviously don't understand English, but also for people that maybe work best just by looking at things and, you know, the words are distracting. So I will be posting one very similar to this video, but yeah, just me without the talking, just me like filming and like doing lines. So I hope that makes sense. If you guys make one of the boxy quilted carry-all bags, please let me know. Tag me in your photos. I'd love to see how they turned out. As I said, this is my pattern, and I have changed the tutorial slightly as well from how I was taught. So there's a few different elements in it that are different, and I'm definitely not saying it's the best one, and there's probably a lot of improvements to be had, but this is just how I do it personally. Let me know what you guys think. Have fun making the boxy quilted makeup bag, and thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. Bye!